Ruth Winslow's knees hit frozen ground at the crossroads where 4 roads led to nothing. The baby in her arms had stopped crying 3 hours ago. Too cold. Or worse. Her hands were blue, her lips cracked and bleeding. She'd walked 40 miles in 2 days. No food. No shelter. No mercy from any town that learned her name. A single rider appeared through the snow. Ruth looked up, her vision blurring. She didn't beg. She just whispered the truth. "I'm dying." The man on the horse stared down at her. His voice came flat, final. "Not today." Before we continue, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far Ruth's story travels. And hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will break your heart before it heals it. Ruth didn't remember deciding to stop walking. Her body made the choice. One moment she was moving, the next she was on her knees in the snow, the crossroads spinning around her. 4 roads, 4 directions, 4 ways to die. She'd tried them all. North led to Benton, where they'd thrown rocks. East was Silver Creek, where the sheriff threatened arrest for vagrancy. South took her through Miller's Pass, where men followed her for 3 miles making offers that weren't offers at all. West was wilderness, just trees and cold, and the kind of silence that swallowed screams. So she'd come back to the crossroads, and stopped. Hope made a sound. Not a cry, something smaller. A whimper that said her 6-month-old body was surrendering. "I know, baby. I know." Ruth pulled the tattered quilt tighter, but there was no warmth left in either of them. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The wind picked up, carrying voices. Ruth's dead mother. Her dead husband. The living townspeople who'd called her cursed, wicked, touched by the devil himself. "Your husband died because you distracted him with your needs. A good woman would have kept the home fire burning, not asked him to stay. That baby's probably cursed too." Ruth closed her eyes. Maybe they were right. Maybe she did bring death wherever she went. Hoofbeats. She opened her eyes. A rider was coming from the east, his horse moving steady through the snow. A big man, broad-shouldered. His coat was thick wool, his hat pulled low. Everything about him said money, but worn money, earned money. Ruth tried to stand. Couldn't. Her legs had quit. The rider stopped 10 feet away. Didn't dismount. Just sat there on his horse, looking down at her. Ruth met his eyes. They were gray, cold as the November sky. "Help me." The words came out broken. "Please, my baby. She needs—" "I know what she needs." The man's voice was rough, deep, empty of emotion. "Question is, what are you willing to do for it?" Ruth's stomach turned. She knew that tone, knew what men wanted when they found desperate women on roads. "I won't." She forced the words through chattering teeth. "I can't. Didn't ask you to." The man finally dismounted. He was tall, maybe 6'2". His face was weathered, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. "I asked what you're willing to do. Work. Stay quiet. Follow orders." Ruth stared. "You want a worker?" "I want someone who won't run. Someone who won't steal. Someone who'll keep a house clean and a mouth shut." He walked closer. Ruth could see his eyes now. Gray, yes, but not cold. Tired. Emptied out. "I want someone who needs shelter bad enough to ignore what the town says about me." "What does the town say?" "That I'm cursed." A bitter smile touched his mouth. "That I kill everything I touch. That God took my wife and child because I'm wicked." Ruth looked at him. Really looked. Saw the grief carved into his face. The loneliness so deep it had become bone. "They say that about me too," she whispered. "That I cursed my husband. That he died in the mines because I made him weak." The man nodded once. "Then we understand each other." He reached down, offered his hand. Ruth looked at it. Saw calluses. Scars. A man who worked. "What's your name?" she asked. "Grant McCoy." I'm Ruth Winslow. Can you ride, Ruth Winslow? I'll try. That's all I'm asking. He pulled her to her feet. Ruth's legs buckled. Grant caught her one arm around her waist, and for the first time in months, Ruth felt warm. He lifted her onto the horse like she weighed nothing, settled Hope between them. Then he swung up behind her, his chest solid against her back. How far? Ruth asked. Far enough. To where? Somewhere the past can't follow. Grant turned the horse west. Hold on. The storm hit before they'd gone a mile. Snow came down like judgment. Fast, thick, blinding. Grant felt Ruth's grip tighten on his coat. Hope whimpered against her mother's chest. There's a line shack 20 minutes west, he said into Ruth's ear. Old trapper's cabin. We shelter there tonight. Your ranch. 2 hours in good weather. We'd die before we made it. He kicked the horse into a faster walk. Trust me. Ruth laughed, a hollow sound. I don't trust anyone. Smart woman. The cabin appeared like a ghost. Low roof, stone chimney, half buried in snow. Grant dismounted, pulled Ruth down, and kicked the door open. The interior was rough. Dirt floor, a pile of old furs in the corner, cobwebs everywhere. But the fireplace was intact. Sit. Grant pointed to the corner. Ruth obeyed her body, moving on instinct. She pulled Hope close, tried to warm her with breath and prayer. Grant worked fast. He had flint and steel in his saddlebag. Dry kindling stored in a tin box. Within 5 minutes, flames were licking up the chimney. Heat. Blessed, miraculous heat. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. She turned away so he wouldn't see. Grant filled a tin cup with snow, set it by the fire to melt. Pulled out jerky and hardtack from his bags. Handed half to Ruth. Eat. I can't pay. Eat. Ruth ate. The jerky was tough, the hardtack like chewing wood. It was the best meal she'd had in weeks. Grant sat across from her, his back against the opposite wall. He ate in silence, watching the fire. Ruth watched him. He was younger than she'd first thought, maybe 35. The grief made him seem older. There was a Bible in his saddlebag, she noticed, well worn, pages marked. You read? She asked. Grant looked up. Some. The Bible. My wife did. His jaw tightened. I listened. That was enough. Past tense. Ruth understood. What happened to her? Grant was quiet for a long time. Then childbirth. 2 years ago. Baby didn't make it either. I'm sorry. Don't be. God decided. Took what mattered. Left me with money and land and nothing to spend it on but silence. Ruth shifted Hope to her other arm. The baby was sleeping now, her breathing steady. Warm. Why help me? Ruth asked. You don't know me. Don't know what I've done. Grant poked the fire with a stick. Sparks flew up. Maybe that's why. Out here your past is just wind. Can't see it. Can't hold it. Only thing that matters is what you do today. The town won't see it that way. Town can rot. Grant's voice was flat. I stopped caring what people think when the only person who mattered stopped breathing. Ruth looked at his face. Saw the anger there, the abandonment. A man who'd lost faith but kept moving because stopping meant dying. She knew that feeling, had lived it for months. What's your ranch like? She asked, changing the subject. Quiet. Too quiet. 3 bedrooms. Root cellar. Good well. I run cattle, but I've been letting the herd thin. No point in building when you're building alone. You have no workers. 2. They live in the bunkhouse. Keep to themselves. Grant looked at her directly now. I need someone in the main house. Someone to cook, clean, keep things from falling apart. I'll pay wages, $20 a month, room and board included. Ruth's breath caught. $20. That was fortune. And in return, you work, you stay quiet, you don't steal, you don't ask questions. His gray eyes held hers. "And you don't run when the town comes asking questions. Because they will come, Ruth. They'll come to condemn you, call you a whore, call your baby a bastard. They'll try to drive you away." "I know." Ruth's voice was steady. "They've already done all that. And I'll stand between you and them. But you have to give me your word you won't run." Grant leaned forward. "I can't save people who won't be saved. I tried that with Anna. Tried to save her from loneliness while I built an empire. Didn't work. She died alone while I was at the mill." Ruth heard the guilt. It matched her own. "I won't run," she said. "I promise." Grant nodded once. "Then we have an arrangement." They sat in silence. The fire crackled. Outside, the storm howled. Ruth glanced at the Bible in Grant's saddlebag. "Will you read something?" Grant followed her gaze. His face closed. "I don't read well. Anna was the reader." "Then I'll read." Grant hesitated, then handed her the Bible. Ruth opened it. The pages were marked, annotated in a woman's handwriting. Notes in the margins. Underlined passages. Ruth found the Book of Ruth. Of course. "Where you go, I will go," she read aloud. Her voice was soft but clear. "Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God." Grant listened without moving. His eyes were closed. Ruth kept reading. "Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." When she finished, silence filled the cabin. Then Grant opened his eyes. Anna marked that passage the week before she died. "She must have loved you very much. She loved the idea of me, the man I promised I'd become." Grant's voice was hollow. "I never became him." Ruth closed the Bible gently. "Maybe you still can." Grant looked at her. Something shifted in his face. Not hope, not yet, but the faintest crack in the ice. "Get some sleep," he said. "We ride at dawn." Ruth lay down on the furs with hope pulled them close. Grant stayed by the fire keeping watch. Just before Ruth fell asleep, she heard him whisper, "Anna, if you're listening, tell me I'm not wrong about this." The fire popped. Sparks flew up the chimney. Grant took that as answer enough. Dawn came gray and cold. The storm had passed, leaving the world buried in white. Grant saddled his horse while Ruth fed Hope with the last of her milk. The baby was stronger today. Her eyes were bright curious. "She's a fighter," Grant said, watching. "She has to be." Ruth wrapped Hope in the quilt. "The world doesn't forgive weakness." "The world doesn't forgive anything." Grant helped Ruth mount. "But maybe we can build a place where it doesn't matter." They rode in silence. The snow was knee-deep on the horse. Trees bent under the weight of ice. Everything was white, silent, frozen. Ruth had never seen anything so beautiful. They crested a hill, and there it was. Grant's ranch. The cabin was larger than Ruth expected. Solid log construction. Smoke rising from the chimney, one of the ranch hands must have stoked the fire. A barn off to the left. Corrals with a few cattle huddled against the wind. Everything was neat, functional, and heartbreakingly lonely. "It's not much," Grant said. "It's everything," Ruth whispered. They rode down the hill. As they approached, Ruth saw details. A vegetable garden buried under snow. A rocking chair on the porch, half covered in ice. A clothesline with nothing on it. Grant dismounted, helped Ruth down. Her legs almost gave out again. Too many days of walking, too little food. "Easy." Grant steadied her. "You're safe now." Ruth looked at him. "Am I?" "I give you my word." Grant pushed the cabin door open. "Welcome home, Ruth Winslow." The interior made Ruth want to weep. Everything was clean, obsessively clean. The floors were swept, the dishes were washed. But it was empty, hollow, a museum to a life that ended. 2 plates sat on a shelf, one worn, one untouched. A woman's shawl hung on a peg covered in dust. A rocking chair faced the fireplace, waiting for someone who would never return. Ruth set Hope down on the table. The baby cooed, reaching for light coming through the window. That room there was Anna's sewing room. Grant pointed to a small door off the main room. It's yours now. I'll pay wages for housekeeping, cooking, mending. $20 a month, like I said. No questions asked about your past. Ruth turned to face him. Why are you doing this? Grant looked at her. Really looked. His gray eyes held nothing but exhaustion. Because this place is swallowing me whole. I wake up, do chores, go to bed, wake up. Nothing changes. Nothing lives. He gestured around the cabin. Maybe if there's someone else here, someone breathing, someone moving, maybe I'll remember how to be alive too. Ruth understood. She'd been drowning in her own grief, her own shame. Maybe they could drown together, or maybe they could find shore. You should know what you're offering shelter to, Ruth said quietly. Don't need to know. Yes, you do. Ruth straightened her spine. The truth had to come out. Better now than later. I was married at 18. My husband Thomas worked in the silver mines outside Benton. We were happy. Or I thought we were. She took a breath. He started staying late at the mines, coming home exhausted. I asked him to stay home more, to rest. He said he couldn't, said he was working extra shifts to save money for a house. Ruth's voice cracked. One night I begged him. I said I needed him home. I was lonely, scared. He got angry, said I was selfish, said I didn't understand how hard he worked. Grant listened without interrupting. The next day there was a collapse. 3 men died. Thomas was one of them. Ruth's hands were shaking. The town said it was my fault, that I'd distracted him, made him tired, made him careless. They said I was cursed, that I brought death. She looked at Grant. I was pregnant. Didn't know until after he died. The town wouldn't help me. Couldn't find work. Couldn't keep the house. Hope was born on the road 6 months ago. I've been walking ever since. Grant was quiet for a long moment. Then he said simply, I built a timber empire. Married my childhood sweetheart. Spent so much time at the mills that I wasn't there when she went into labor. His jaw tightened. She died. The baby didn't make it either. Doctor said if I'd been there sooner, maybe he could have saved them. Maybe not. But I wasn't there. I was saving the mill from a labor dispute, saving everyone's jobs. He looked at Ruth. I saved everyone's livelihood, but I couldn't save her. They stood in the silence between their griefs. 2 people who'd been blamed for deaths they didn't cause. 2 people carrying guilt that would never lift. The town will come, Ruth whispered. When they see me here, they'll come. Let them. Grant moved to the fireplace, added wood. I stopped caring what people think when the only person who mattered stopped breathing. Ruth looked at the 2 plates again. Understood now. One worn from Grant's use. One waiting for Anna's return. I'll stay, she said. But I need you to know I won't be her. I can't replace your wife. I'm not asking you to. Grant turned to face her. I'm asking you to help me survive. And maybe I can help you do the same. Ruth picked up Hope. The baby grabbed her finger, held tight. Then we have an arrangement, Mr. McCoy. Grant, he corrected. If we're going to survive together, you call me Grant. Grant. Ruth tested the name. It felt solid, real. And you call me Ruth. Ruth. He nodded once. Welcome home. That night, Grant set both plates on the table for the first time in 2 years. Ruth cooked stew from vegetables in the root cellar and salt pork from the stores. It wasn't fancy, but it was hot. It was food. It was shared. They ate in silence. Hope slept in a basket by the fire, her breathing steady and strong. Grant's hands shook when he reached for bread. Ruth pretended not to notice. After dinner, Grant washed the dishes while Ruth nursed Hope in the back room. When she emerged, he was standing by the fireplace, staring at Anna's shawl on the peg. "You can move it," Ruth said quietly. "I don't mind." "I know." Grant didn't move. "But I think maybe it's time I let her go." He reached up, took the shawl down, folded it carefully, walked to the back room, Anna's room now, Ruth's room, and placed it in a trunk at the foot of the bed. "She'd want you to use this room," he said. "She'd want Hope to have a home." Ruth's throat tightened. "You loved her very much." "I did." Grant looked at her. "And I failed her. I won't fail you too, Ruth. I promise." "You don't owe me—" "Yes, I do." Grant's voice was firm. "You made a promise not to run. I'm making one to stand. Whatever comes, whatever the town says, I stand." Ruth nodded. She believed him. Didn't know why. But she did. Grant left her alone to settle in. Ruth laid Hope in the bed, tucked the quilt around her. Then she sat by the window looking out at the snow. Somewhere out there, people who hated her were sleeping. People who'd thrown rocks called her cursed, driven her onto the road to die. But here in this cabin, with this grieving man and his empty plates, Ruth felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. She didn't know if it would last. Didn't know if Grant could keep his promise when the town came calling. But for tonight, she was warm. She was fed. Her baby was sleeping peacefully. For tonight, that was enough. Ruth closed her eyes and whispered to the darkness, "Thank you." No one answered. But the fire crackled. The wind settled. And Ruth slept without nightmares for the first time in a year. Winter gave them routine. Routine gave them language. Language gave them something more dangerous than either expected. Ruth woke before dawn that first week. Old habit from months of walking, always moving before the cold could settle in her bones. She fed Hope, changed her, then stepped into the main room. Grant was already up. Dressed. Boots on. He was layering wood into the stove, his movements practiced and silent. "You don't have to wake this early," he said without turning around. "Can't sleep past sunrise." Ruth moved to the kitchen area. "Coffee, if you're offering." Ruth found the coffee tin, the pot, the well water already drawn. She worked quietly, measuring grounds the way her mother had taught her. Within minutes, the smell filled the cabin. Grant sat at the table. Waited. When Ruth poured 2 cups and set one in front of him, something crossed his face. Surprise, maybe. Or pain. Like he'd forgotten what it felt like to be served by someone who cared. "Thank you," he said. "It's my job." Still. He wrapped his hands around the cup. "Thank you." They drank in silence. Hope cooed from her basket. The sun started to rise, painting the snow outside gold and pink. "I need to check the cattle today," Grant said. "Could be gone till afternoon. There's bread in the box, salt pork in the cellar. Help yourself to anything." "I'll clean," Ruth said. "And cook. That's what you're paying me for." Grant nodded, stood, pulled on his coat and gloves. At the door, he paused. "Ruth, yes. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me." "You expecting trouble?" "Always." Grant's face was hard. "Town's only 10 miles east. Word travels fast in winter. They'll know you're here by now." Ruth's stomach tightened. "And if they come?" "They won't today. Ground's too frozen for easy riding. But they'll come." He looked at her directly. "When they do, you stay inside. Let me handle it." "I can handle myself." "I know you can." Grant's voice softened slightly. "But you shouldn't have to. Not anymore." He left. Ruth watched through the window as he saddled his horse, rode toward the distant pastures. When he disappeared over the hill, she locked the door. Then she got to work. The cabin was clean, but it was the clean of someone who didn't care. Functional. Joyless. Ruth started in the kitchen, scrubbing every surface until her hands were raw. She found Anna's dishes, the fine china tucked away in a high cabinet. Washed them. Set them out where they could be seen. Hope watched from her basket, gurgling and reaching for dust motes in the sunlight. "Your mama's going to make this a home," Ruth told her. "A real home." By noon, the cabin smelled like lye soap and hope. Ruth made bread, the dough rising by the fire. She found Anna's sewing kit in the back room, mended Grant's shirts where buttons had fallen off. Small things. Things that said someone cared. Grant returned at dusk, stamping snow off his boots. He stopped in the doorway, staring. "You didn't have to do all this," he said. "I did, actually." Ruth wiped her hands on her apron. "You're paying me to keep house. This is keeping house." Grant walked slowly through the room, taking it in. The clean surfaces, the smell of fresh bread, Anna's dishes on display, his mended shirts folded on the chair. His jaw worked. He didn't speak. "Did I do something wrong?" Ruth asked quietly. "No." Grant's voice was rough. "No, you did everything right. That's the problem." He sat heavily in the chair, put his head in his hands. Ruth stood frozen, unsure. "I'm sorry," she said. "I can put the dishes away. I just thought—" "Don't." Grant looked up. His eyes were red. "Don't apologize. This is the first time in 2 years this place has felt like a home instead of a tomb." He stood abruptly, walked to the fireplace, pressed his palms against the mantel. Anna would have loved this. The bread, the clean windows. She used to beg me to notice things like that. I never did. Too busy. Too focused on building the business. Ruth moved closer. Not too close. Just near enough to hear if he needed to be heard. "She'd be glad someone's taking care of you now," Ruth said softly. "I don't deserve it." "Maybe not." Ruth's voice was honest. "But Hope and I don't deserve to freeze on a road either. Sometimes we get things we don't deserve. Good and bad." Grant looked at her. Something passed between them. Understanding. The kind that doesn't need words. "Bread smells good," he said finally. "It'll be ready in 20 minutes. Then I'll wash up." They ate together that night. The bread was warm, the butter yellow, and fresh from the cold box. Grant ate slowly, deliberately, like he was trying to remember what hunger felt like when it was satisfied by more than just food. "This is good," he said. "It's just bread." "It's not just bread." Grant met her eyes. "It's the first meal in 2 years that didn't taste like ash." Ruth's throat tightened. She looked down at her plate. They finished eating in comfortable silence. After Grant pulled out a piece of bark and a chunk of charcoal, started sketching something. "What's that?" Ruth asked, clearing plates. "A cradle." Grant showed her the design. Curved rockers, high sides, a canopy. "Hope's outgrowing that basket. Thought I'd build her something proper." Ruth's hands stilled on the dishes. A cradle. That meant permanence. That meant he believed she'd still be here in spring. "I'd like to help," she said quietly. Grant looked surprised. "You want to learn carpentry?" "I want to learn not to be afraid of tomorrow." Ruth dried her hands. "Every town I've been to, I've had to leave. Every place I've stayed, I've been driven out. I want to build something that can't be taken away." Grant studied her face, then nodded once. "Tomorrow, after chores. I'll teach you." That night, Ruth lay in Anna's bed with Hope beside her. The room smelled like cedar and old lavender. She could feel the ghost of the woman who'd lived here before, could sense her in the careful embroidery on the pillowcases, the pressed flowers in the Bible, the love notes tucked into drawers. Ruth didn't feel like an intruder. She felt like a guest in a home that had been waiting for someone to bring it back to life. The days fell into rhythm. Grant woke early, did chores. Ruth cooked, cleaned, cared for Hope. In the afternoons, they worked in the woodshed together. Grant taught her how to hold a plane, how to let the blade ride with the grain, not against it. He placed his hands over hers to guide the angle, and Ruth felt the calluses on his palms, the steadiness of his grip. It was the first time a man had touched her without taking. "Like this." Grant set his breath warm near her ear. "Let the wood tell you where it wants to go." Ruth focused on the motion, the rasp of the blade, the curl of wood shaving away. She felt safe, grounded, real. They worked mostly in silence. Grant wasn't a talker, but sometimes he'd share things, small things. "Anna loved winter," he said one afternoon, shaping a rocker. "Said it made everything clean, new." "What did you love?" Ruth asked. Grant paused, thought. "I loved her. That was enough. And now? Now I'm trying to remember how to love anything at all." The cradle took shape slowly. Curved runners, smooth sides. Grant carved simple flowers into the headboard, his hands steady and sure. "These were Anna's favorite," he said, tracing the petals. "Wild roses." Ruth watched his face, saw the grief still there but softer now, worn smooth by time and silence. "She's still with you," Ruth said quietly. "I know." Grant set down the carving knife. "And I think she'd want me to keep living, not just surviving." Ruth understood. She'd been surviving since Thomas died. Moving, walking, breathing, but not living. Maybe here in this cold cabin with this grieving man, she could learn the difference. 2 weeks into December, the preacher came. Ruth saw him first through the window, a man on a gray mare riding slow and deliberate. His black coat marked him, his stiff posture, the Bible strapped to his saddle. "Grant," Ruth said, her voice tight. "Someone's coming." Grant was at the table, oiling a bridle. He stood, looked out. His face went hard. "Reverend Silas." He said the name like a curse. "Stay inside." "What does he want?" "To judge." Grant grabbed his coat. "To condemn. To remind me what a good Christian does and doesn't do." He walked outside. Ruth watched through the window, hope in her arms. Reverend Silas dismounted. He was tall, thin, his face pinched with cold and self-righteousness. He removed his hat when he saw Grant. "Mr. McCoy," Silas said. "Fine afternoon?" "Cold afternoon," Grant corrected. "What brings you out here, Reverend?" "Concern." Silas's eyes flicked to the cabin, to the window where Ruth stood. "Heard you've taken in a woman, a widow with a child." "That's right." "Might I ask her name?" "You might, but I won't give it." Grant's voice was flat. "She's my housekeeper. That's all you need to know." Silas smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. McCoy, I'm here as a friend. The town's talking, saying you've brought shame on yourself, on Anna's memory." Grant's hands curled into fists. "Anna's memory is mine to keep, not the town's." "But appearances matter. You know this." Silas stepped closer. "I'm offering you a chance to do right. Marry the woman properly, or send her away. Save your reputation. Save hers. And if I don't, then I fear the consequences." Silas's voice dropped. "There are men in town who remember your wife, who loved her, who think you've dishonored her by bringing another woman into her home so quickly. 2 years isn't quickly. 2 years isn't long enough for some." Silas put his hat back on. "I'll be praying for you, Mr. McCoy, that you make the right choice." He mounted his horse, rode away. Grant stood in the snow, his shoulders rigid. Ruth opened the door. "Grant?" He didn't turn. "He'll talk. The whole town will know by tomorrow." "I can leave." "No." Grant's voice was hard. "You promised not to run. I promised to stand. We keep our promises." But Ruth heard the doubt underneath, heard the fear. That night, Grant sat by the fire reading, or trying to read. He stumbled over words, his finger tracing lines slowly. Ruth realized with a start that he was teaching himself to read better, so he could read to her the way Anna used to read to him. Her chest ached. "Grant," she said softly, "you don't have to do that." "I want to." He didn't look up. "You said you missed hearing scripture. Figured I could learn." Ruth moved to sit beside him. "Will you let me help?" Grant hesitated, then nodded. They sat together by the fire, Ruth teaching Grant to sound out words he'd only ever heard spoken, teaching him to read the Bible his dead wife had loved. Hope slept in her basket. The wind howled outside, and for a few hours the world beyond the cabin didn't exist. But it would come. Ruth knew it would come. The question was whether they'd be ready when it did. December deepened. The cold turned vicious. Grant rode out every morning to check cattle break ice on water troughs, ensure his 2 ranch hands in the bunkhouse had supplies. Ruth made the cabin a home. She cooked meals that filled the rooms with warmth. She sang to Hope while she worked. She laughed, actually laughed when Grant came in, covered in snow, and shook like a dog, making Hope squeal with delight. "You're trouble," Ruth said, wiping snow off the floor. "You're particular," Grant shot back, but he was almost smiling. Almost. The cradle was nearly finished. They worked on it together every afternoon, Ruth's hands learning the rhythm of sandpaper smoothing wood, learning how to build something that would last. "My father was a carpenter," Grant said one day. "Taught me everything. Said a man who can build can survive anywhere." "Why didn't you become a carpenter?" "Because timber paid more. Because I wanted to give Anna everything." Grant's hand stilled on the wood. "Turns out everything wasn't enough." Ruth touched his arm gently. "You gave her love. That was enough." "Was it?" Grant's voice was raw. "She died alone, Ruth, screaming for me. And I was 10 miles away arguing about lumber prices." "You didn't know." "I should have." Grant pulled away, stood, walked to the window. "I should have known she needed me more than the business did." Ruth wanted to comfort him, wanted to say the right thing. But there was no right thing. Grief didn't have answers. "I wasn't there when Thomas died either," Ruth said quietly. "He left angry that morning. We'd fought about money, about him working too much. His last words to me were, 'You don't understand anything.'" She joined Grant at the window. "When they came to tell me about the collapse, I thought maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't understand. Maybe if I'd been a better wife, he would have been more careful." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Ruth's voice broke. "The town thinks so. They think I cursed him. And some days I believe them." Grant turned to face her. His gray eyes were fierce. "You didn't curse anyone. You loved a man who worked himself to death. I loved a woman who needed me, and I wasn't there. We're both guilty of being human. Nothing more." Ruth met his gaze. Something shifted between them. Something that felt like understanding, like forgiveness, like the beginning of something neither of them had words for yet. "The cradle's almost done." Grant said, his voice softer now. "Another week, and Hope'll have a proper bed." "She's lucky," Ruth whispered. "We both are." Grant didn't answer, just looked at her with those storm-gray eyes, and Ruth felt seen for the first time since Thomas died. Not judged, not condemned, just seen. Christmas came quiet and cold. Ruth woke to find Grant had left a small package on the table. Inside was fabric, good fabric, blue wool, soft and warm. "For a dress," Grant said when she came out of her room. "Saw you mending that one you're wearing. Figured you deserved something new." Ruth's hands trembled on the fabric. "I can't accept this." "Why not?" "It's too much." "It's fabric, Ruth, not a dowry." Grant poured coffee. "Besides, it's Christmas. Even housekeepers get Christmas gifts." Ruth wanted to cry, wanted to throw her arms around him and sob, but she just said, "Thank you." They spent the day quietly. Ruth cooked a chicken, made bread pudding with precious sugar Grant had stored away. They ate at the table, Hope between them in her basket, grabbing at everything within reach. After dinner, Grant pulled out Anna's Bible. "Will you read?" Ruth took it. Found the Christmas story in Luke. Read about Mary and Joseph, about no room at the inn, about shepherds and angels, and Hope born in a stable. When she finished, Grant was staring at the fire. "Anna and I always talked about having children," he said. "She wanted a house full of them. Wanted noise and chaos and life everywhere. You would have been a good father." "I'll never know." Grant's voice was hollow. All I know is I failed the one chance I had. Ruth set the Bible down, moved to kneel beside his chair. Grant, look at me. He did. His eyes were wet. You didn't fail, Ruth said fiercely. You loved. You built. You tried. That's all anyone can do. It wasn't enough. It was enough for her. I see it in every note she left in that Bible, every flower she pressed, every tablecloth she embroidered. Ruth gripped his hand. She loved you, Grant McCoy, and she'd want you to forgive yourself. Grant's face crumpled. He pulled his hand away, covered his eyes. His shoulders shook. Ruth had never seen a man cry like that. Raw, broken, honest. She didn't try to stop him, just stayed close. Let him grieve. When he finally stilled, he looked at her with exhausted eyes. Thank you, he whispered. Ruth nodded, stood. Merry Christmas, Grant. Merry Christmas, Ruth. That night, the cradle sat in the corner of Ruth's room. Finished. Beautiful. A testament to survival and hope, and two broken people, learning to build again. Hope slept in it for the first time her small body cradled by wood Grant had shaped. Ruth had smoothed, and both had blessed with tears they didn't know they needed to shed. Outside, snow fell soft and clean. Inside, something warmer than fire took root, but winter wasn't done with them yet. The next morning, Grant's ranch hand Jonas appeared at the door. He was young, maybe 20, his face tight with worry. Boss, we got trouble. Grant was pulling on his boots. What kind ye cattle? Found 3 dead in the east pasture. Not cold, not wolves. Jonas shifted. Someone shot them. Grant went still. You sure? Bullet holes, clean shots. Jonas glanced at Ruth, then back to Grant. And there was a note nailed to the fence post. What did it say? Jonas pulled a crumpled paper from his coat. Grant read it, his face going hard as stone. Ruth couldn't see the words, but she saw Grant's reaction. Get back to the bunkhouse, Grant told Jonas. Tell Peter to stay armed. No one goes out alone. Jonas nodded, left quickly. Ruth waited until he was gone. What did it say? Grant handed her the note. The handwriting was rough, the message clear. Send the cursed woman away or lose more than cattle. Ruth's blood went cold. They're coming. Not yet. Grant crumpled the note. This is a warning. They want me to break first. Send you away myself. Save them the trouble. Maybe you should. No. Grant's voice was iron. I gave my word. I don't break my word. Grant, they'll destroy you. Let them try. He grabbed his rifle from above the door. I've lost everything that mattered once. I won't lose my honor too. Ruth watched him check the rifle, load it with steady hands. This man. This grieving, stubborn, honorable man. What are you going to do? She asked. Grant looked at her. His gray eyes were storm clouds. I'm going to remind them who owns half the timber in this territory, and that I don't scare easy. He rode out before she could argue. Ruth spent the day terrified. She held Hope close, jumped at every sound, watched the road for riders who might come while Grant was gone. But no one came. Grant returned at dusk, his face grim. Went to town, had a conversation with Sheriff Briggs, told him about the cattle, the threat. What did he say? That he'd look into it, which means nothing. Grant unsaddled his horse. But I also stopped by the mill, told my foreman to spread the word anyone who works for me better not be the one threatening my property, or they'll find themselves without a job come spring. Will that help? Maybe, maybe not. Grant walked into the cabin, set his rifle by the door. But they know now I'm not backing down. Ruth felt pride and terror warring in her chest. Pride that he'd stood for her. Terror that it might cost him everything. That night they ate in tense silence. Hope was fussy, sensing the fear in the room. Ruth walked her singing soft songs, trying to calm them both. Grant watched from his chair. Finally he said, "Ruth, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If they come when I'm not here, you take Hope and you hide. There's a root cellar under the kitchen. Trap door under that rug." He pointed. "You go down there and you don't come out till you hear my voice. Understand?" Ruth's throat was tight. "Yes. Say it." "I understand." Grant nodded, stood, walked to her, placed a hand on her shoulder. "I won't let them hurt you, I promise." Ruth looked up at him, this man who barely knew her, who'd taken her in when no one else would, who was risking everything to keep her safe. "Why?" she whispered. "Why does it matter so much?" Grant's hand tightened slightly. "Because you matter. You and Hope. You're not just my housekeeper, Ruth. You're the first reason I've had to wake up in 2 years." Ruth's breath caught. Grant stepped back quickly like he'd said too much. "Get some rest. I'll keep watch tonight." He sat by the fire rifle across his lap. Ruth took Hope to bed. But she didn't sleep. She lay in the darkness, Grant's words echoing. "You're the first reason I've had to wake up in 2 years." Something was shifting between them. Something deeper than employer and employee. Deeper than shelter and gratitude. Something that terrified Ruth more than any threat from town ever could. Because if she let herself care for Grant McCoy, really care, and if they came and took it all away again, she didn't think she'd survive it. But as Hope slept peacefully in her new cradle, and as Ruth heard Grant moving quietly in the next room keeping watch, keeping them safe, she realized something. Maybe survival wasn't the point anymore. Maybe living was. And maybe, just maybe, living meant taking the risk. The threat hung over them like smoke. Grant kept his rifle close. Ruth jumped at shadows. 3 more days passed without incident, but the waiting was worse than any attack. Then Hope got sick. It started small. A fussiness Ruth blamed on teething, but by nightfall Hope was burning. Ruth pressed her palm to the baby's forehead and felt her heart stop. This wasn't normal fever. This was the kind that took children in the night and didn't give them back. "Grant?" Her voice came out strangled. He was at the table cleaning his rifle. He looked up, saw her face, and crossed the room in 3 strides. "How long?" he asked, touching Hope's cheek. "Since this afternoon. I thought it was nothing, but it's getting worse." Grant's jaw tightened. "Willow bark tea." "Already tried. She won't take it. She's too weak to drink." Hope whimpered, her small body trembling. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused. Ruth had seen that look before, on children in the town she'd passed through, children who didn't make it. "No!" Ruth's voice broke. "No, not her. Please, not her." Grant grabbed his coat. "I'm riding to town. Doc Wilson keeps fever medicine." Ruth stared at him. "Grant, it's 20 below out there. There's another storm coming. You'll die. And if I don't go, she might." He was already pulling on his gloves. "That's not a choice." "Yes, it is. You can stay. You can stay alive." Grant stopped at the door, turned to look at her. His gray eyes were fierce, burning with something Ruth couldn't name. "You think I can sit here and watch her die when I might be able to save her?" His voice was rough. "I couldn't save Anna. Couldn't save my own child. But I can try to save Hope. I have to try. Grant, please. Keep her warm. Keep her drinking if you can. I'll be back before dawn." He opened the door. Cold air rushed in like a living thing. "Lock this behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me." "Grant, wait." But he was gone. The door slammed. Ruth heard his horse's hooves pounding through snow, fading into distance. She stood frozen, hope burning in her arms. Then she moved. She built the fire higher, heated water, stripped Hope down to her diaper and sponged her with lukewarm water, trying to bring the fever down. She sang every lullaby she knew, prayed to a God she wasn't sure was listening. The hours crawled. Midnight came and went. Hope's fever spiked higher. Her breathing turned shallow. Ruth walked circles around the cabin, rocking her, whispering promises she couldn't keep. Stay with me, baby. Stay with me. Your mama needs you. Grant needs you. We both need you. But Hope's eyes stayed closed. Her body stayed limp. Ruth thought about Thomas, about how quickly death could come, how it didn't care about love or need or desperation. She thought about Grant riding through deadly cold for a baby that wasn't his, for a woman he barely knew, risking everything because he'd already lost everything and had nothing left to lose but his word. The storm hit around 2 a.m. Wind screamed against the cabin walls. Snow pounded the windows. Ruth couldn't see more than a foot beyond the glass. Grant was out there somewhere. In that. Alone. Ruth held Hope tighter and wept. She'd sent him to his death, just like everyone said she did to Thomas. She was cursed. She brought ruin to every man who tried to help her. I'm sorry, she whispered to the storm. I'm so sorry, Grant. You should have let me die at that crossroads. Hope's breathing changed, became ragged, desperate. Ruth's chest seized. No, 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 no. Please, God, please. She didn't know who she was begging. God, Grant, death itself. The door burst open. Grant stumbled in ice, clinging to his beard, his face gray with cold. He could barely stand, but he held up a small bottle. 2 drops, he gasped. Every 4 hours. Doc said 2 drops. Ruth snatched the bottle with shaking hands, pulled the stopper, tilted Hope's head back, and let 2 precious drops fall onto her tongue. Hope coughed, swallowed, went still. Ruth held her breath, counted heartbeats, prayed. Then Hope took a deeper breath, and another. Ruth sobbed, clutched Hope to her chest. Thank you. Thank you. She turned to Grant. He was leaning against the door, his eyes half closed. His hands were swollen, the fingertips white. Grant, your hands. They're fine. They're frostbitten. Ruth laid Hope in her cradle, ran to Grant, pulled off his gloves. His fingers were icy, the skin mottled. Sit. Now. She pushed him toward the fire. He collapsed in the chair. Ruth knelt, took his hands in hers, started rubbing them gently, breathing warm air over his skin. You're an idiot, she said, her voice breaking. A complete idiot. Probably. Grant's teeth were chattering. But Hope's alive. You could have died. Didn't, though. Ruth looked up at his face, at the exhaustion there, the relief. The stubborn, stupid courage that had sent him into a killer storm for a baby that wasn't his blood. Why? She whispered. Why would you risk this? Grant met her eyes. His were clear despite the cold, despite the pain. Because you're not lost anymore, Ruth. Neither am I. His voice was steady. And I'm done letting people I care about die when I might be able to save them. Ruth's hands stilled on his. People you care about. You. Grant said it simply. And Hope. I care about you. Both of you. Ruth's chest felt too tight to breathe. Grant, I'm just your housekeeper. You stopped being just my housekeeper about 2 weeks ago. He pulled one hand free, touched her face gently. His fingers were cold, but his touch was warm. You're the reason I remember how to smile. The reason this cabin feels like a home again. The reason I wake up and don't hate the day ahead. Ruth was crying. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you. Neither of us deserves anything, but maybe that's the point. Grant's thumb brushed away a tear. Maybe we stop asking what we deserve and start choosing what we need. Ruth leaned into his touch. This man. This impossible, stubborn, beautiful man who'd ridden through death for her daughter. Your hands are going to hurt tomorrow, she said softly. I know. You won't be able to work for days. I know. I'll have to take care of you. Grant almost smiled. I was hoping you would. Ruth stood, helped him out of his coat. His whole body was shaking now, the adrenaline fading, leaving only exhaustion and cold. Sit close to the fire, I'll make tea. She worked quickly, her hands steady now. Made strong tea with precious honey. Brought it to Grant wrapped blankets around his shoulders. Checked Hope every few minutes. The fever was breaking. The medicine was working. They'd both live. Ruth sank into the chair beside Grant's. They sat in silence, watching the fire, listening to Hope's steady breathing. "The town's going to hear about this," Ruth said quietly. "You riding to town in the middle of the night, for my baby. They'll know you care." "Let them know." "Grant, I'm tired of hiding, Ruth." He looked at her. "Tired of pretending I don't feel things. Tired of letting fear make my choices." "Fear keeps us safe." "No, fear keeps us alone." Grant winced as his hands protested. "Anna used to say that to me. Don't let fear make you small, Grant. Be bigger than your grief." I didn't understand what she meant, but I think I'm starting to. Ruth wanted to argue, wanted to protect him from what was coming, but she could see the decision in his eyes. He'd already made his choice. "They'll come for us now," she said. "I know. They'll try to drive me away. I know. And you'll lose everything trying to stop them." Grant turned to face her fully. "Ruth, I already lost everything 2 years ago. My wife, my child, my faith, my will to live. All I had left was land and money and silence." He reached for her hand, held it despite the pain. "You gave me something back. Hope gave me something back. Even if they take everything else, I'll have had this, these months, this feeling. That's more than I've had in years." Ruth gripped his hand. "I'm scared. So am I. What if we're not strong enough? Then we'll break together." Grant's voice was steady. "Better than breaking alone." They sat like that until dawn, hand in hand, Hope sleeping peacefully, the fire burning low. When the sun rose, Grant's hands were bandaged and useless. Ruth had to help him dress, help him eat. He hated it. She could see the frustration in every movement. "I should be taking care of you," he said, as she spooned oatmeal into his mouth. "You did take care of me. Last night. Now it's my turn." "This isn't what you signed up for." Ruth set the bowl down. "I signed up for keeping house. For cooking and cleaning. For $20 a month." She met his eyes. "But somewhere along the way it became more than that, for both of us." Grant held her gaze. "Ruth, don't." She touched his face gently. "Don't say anything yet. Let's just get through today, then tomorrow, then the next day. And when your hands heal and Hope's fever is gone and the town comes knocking, we'll face it together." Grant nodded slowly. Together. Together. The next week was quiet. Too quiet. Grant's hands healed slowly, the skin tender and new. Ruth ran the ranch with help from Jonas and Peter. She fed the chickens, collected eggs, even learned to milk the cow. Hope recovered completely, got stronger, started pulling herself up on furniture, determined to stand. "She's a fighter," Grant said, watching Hope grab the edge of the table and haul herself upright. "Like her mother." Ruth smiled. "Or like the stubborn man who wouldn't let her die." They fell into new rhythms. Ruth reading to Grant in the evenings while he exercised his hands, working the stiffness out. Grant teaching Ruth how to shoot the rifle just in case. Both of them pretending not to notice how their hands touched more often, how they stood closer, how the air between them had changed. But the peace couldn't last. On the 8th day, riders came. Ruth saw them first. 5 men on horseback riding hard from the east. She recognized the sheriff's badge even from a distance. "Grant." Her voice was steady, but her heart was racing. "They're here." Grant looked out the window, his jaw tightened. "Jonas, Peter, get to the bunkhouse. Stay there unless I call." The ranch hands obeyed quickly. Grant turned to Ruth. "Inside, lock the door." "No." Ruth's voice was firm. "I'm not hiding, not this time." "Ruth." "No, Grant. If they're coming for me, I face them. I'm done running." Grant stared at her, then nodded once. "Then we face them together." They walked onto the porch, side by side. Grant's hands were still bandaged, but he stood tall. Ruth held Hope, who babbled happily, oblivious to the danger. The riders stopped 20 feet from the porch. Ruth recognized Sheriff Tom Briggs, Reverend Silas, and 3 other men. One was Warren Kent, the banker who'd been trying to buy Grant's timber rights for years. The other 2 were townsmen Ruth had seen in passing. Warren spoke first. His smile was sharp as broken glass. "Mr. McCoy, come to your senses yet?" Grant's voice was flat. "State your business, Kent." "Our business is the town's moral standing." Warren gestured to the other men. "We've heard troubling reports. A woman living here, unwed. A child of uncertain parentage. It reflects poorly on all of us. Ruth is my housekeeper. That's all you need to know." Reverend Silas stepped forward. "Grant, we're here as friends, as men of conscience. You know this situation is improper. Do right by the woman. Marry her proper or send her away." Ruth felt Grant tense beside her. She knew what he was thinking. Knew he was remembering Anna. Remembering how the town had whispered after her death. How they'd blamed him. The memory was paralyzing him. "Mr. McCoy," Warren's voice had an edge now. "We're waiting." Grant opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Ruth saw it happen, saw him fold, saw the fear win. Her heart sank. Warren saw it too. His smile widened. Perhaps the woman should make this easier for everyone. He looked at Ruth directly. "Mrs. Winslow, we know who you are. We know what happened in Benton. How your husband died. How you've wandered from town to town, leaving disaster in your wake." Ruth's face burned, but she kept her chin up. "We're offering you a choice," Warren continued. "Leave quietly now. Take the child. We'll even provide supplies for your journey. Or stay and watch this good man's reputation destroyed. His business ruined. His life made unbearable." Ruth looked at Grant. He was frozen, trapped between fear and honor, unable to move. She made the decision for him. "I'll leave." Her voice was steady. "I'll pack my things and be gone by evening." "Ruth, no." Grant's voice came out strangled. "Yes." She looked at him, her eyes dry. "You've done enough, Grant McCoy, more than anyone, but I won't let you lose everything because of me." "Ruth, thank you for the shelter." She kept her tone even, dignity intact. It was more than most would give. She turned, walked back into the cabin. Grant stood frozen on the porch. Warren's voice carried through the open door. "You made the right choice, McCoy. A man like you needs to protect his standing." Ruth heard Grant's silence. Heard him let her go. She'd expected it. Had known from the beginning that this moment would come. That when push came to shove, fear would win. It always did. But God, it hurt. She packed quickly. The few clothes she owned. The fabric Grant had given her for Christmas, still unused. Hope's blankets. She moved mechanically, her chest hollow. Hope fussed, sensing her mother's distress. "It's all right, baby," Ruth whispered. "We've been lost before. We'll find another road." But she didn't believe it anymore. There were no more roads, just endless walking toward nothing. Ruth emerged with her bundle. The men were still there, mounted on their horses, satisfied. Grant stood on the porch, his face ashen. Their eyes met. Ruth saw the war in him, saw him drowning in fear and shame and grief. She walked past him, didn't say goodbye, couldn't. She walked past the men without looking at them, headed toward the tree line, toward the road, toward the wilderness that had nearly killed her once before. Behind her she heard Warren say, "You'll thank us later, McCoy. A man like you." Ruth kept walking, didn't look back. The cold hit her immediately. She'd left in such a hurry she'd forgotten her heavy shawl. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered. She walked until her legs ached, until Hope started crying from cold, until the sun began to set and the temperature dropped. She found a tree, a big pine with low branches, crawled beneath it, pulled Hope close inside her coat. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her daughter. I'm so sorry, baby. I tried. I really tried. Hope whimpered, her small face red from crying. Ruth closed her eyes. She was too tired to walk further. Too tired to fight. Too tired to survive. Maybe this was how it ended. Maybe this was God's answer to all her prayers. She held Hope close and waited for the cold to take them. Back at the cabin, Grant stood alone. The men had left. The sun was setting. The silence was complete. He walked inside, saw Ruth's room. Empty now except for Anna's trunk. Saw the cradle they'd built together. Abandoned. He saw the 2 plates on the shelf. Both used now. Both worn from meals shared. He saw Anna's shawl still draped over Ruth's chair. It smelled like Ruth now. Like bread, and hope, and life. Grant sank into his chair, put his head in his hands. He'd done it again. Let fear win. Let the woman who mattered walk away while he stood silent. He'd failed Anna. And now, he'd failed Ruth. The Bible sat on the table. Anna's Bible. Grant opened it with shaking hands. Found the pressed wildflower from the day she'd told him she was pregnant. The day she'd glowed with joy and he'd been too busy to really see. He remembered her last words, whispered through pain and fading life. Don't let fear make you small, Grant. Be bigger than your grief. He'd failed her then. Spent 2 years running from that failure. And tonight he'd done it again. Let fear silence him when love demanded he speak. Grant stood abruptly, grabbed his coat, his gloves. Not again, he said to the empty room. Not again. He ran to the barn, saddled his horse with clumsy, still healing hands. Mounted and kicked the animal into a gallop. The cold was brutal. The light was failing. But Grant rode like death itself was chasing him. Because it was. The death of everything that mattered. The death of the man he was supposed to be. He found them a mile west. Ruth slumped against a tree. Hope clutched to her chest, both unconscious from cold. Grant was off his horse before it stopped moving. He lifted Ruth, felt her icy skin, and terror shot through him. Ruth! Ruth, wake up! He shook her gently. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, confused. Grant, I'm here. I've got you. He lifted them both, put them on the horse, climbed up behind them. I've got you. I'm not letting go. Not ever again. He rode back faster than was safe, burst through the cabin door, built the fire to roaring, wrapped Ruth and Hope in every blanket, every fur he owned, made hot broth when Ruth woke enough to drink. Why? Ruth's voice was weak. You let me go. I was wrong. Grant knelt beside her, his face wrecked. I was a coward. I let them make me small. I let fear win. But I won't do it again, Ruth. I swear to you I won't. It's too late. No, it's not. He pulled the wildflower from his pocket. Anna's flower. Anna would have loved you. She would have stood for you. And I should have stood for you too. I should have fought for you. He pressed the flower into Ruth's palm. I won't make that mistake twice. Tomorrow we go to town. Tomorrow I tell them all that you're not going anywhere. That they can judge all they want, but you're staying. Because I choose you. Ruth stared at him, tears sliding down her cold cheeks. Grant, marry me. The words burst out of him. Not because of them. Not in spite of them. Because you're the first thing that's felt like living since Anna died. Because Hope deserves a father who shows up. Because I'm done being a ghost in my own life. Ruth looked at him. At this impossible man who'd ridden into a killer storm to save her daughter. Who'd nearly frozen to death himself. Who'd finally found his voice. The town won't forgive us, she whispered. I don't care about the town. I care about you. Grant cupped her face with his bandaged hands. Say yes, Ruth. Please say yes. Ruth looked at Hope sleeping peacefully now in the warm cabin. Looked at Grant's face open and honest and terrified. She thought about all the roads she'd walked. All the towns that had turned her away. All the judgment and shame and loss. And she thought about this cabin, this man, this chance at something real. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Grant pulled her close, careful of hope between them. He pressed his forehead to hers. "I'll stand for you," he promised. "Tomorrow, and every day after. I'll stand." Ruth believed him. Outside the night was brutal, but inside, wrapped in blankets and promises and hope, they were warm. The hardest battle was still ahead. The town wouldn't forgive easily. Warren Kent wouldn't stop. But for tonight, they had each other. And that was enough. Grant spent the night teaching Ruth to read the passage from the book of Ruth. The one Anna had marked. The one that mattered. "Where you go, I will go." Ruth's voice was soft but steady reading by firelight. "Where you stay, I will stay." Grant listened, his eyes closed. Again. She read it again, and again, until the words were burned into both of them. By dawn, Grant could recite it without stumbling, could speak it with conviction instead of fear. "We leave in an hour," he said, standing. "Town's 10 miles. We'll be there by mid-morning." Ruth's stomach nodded. "Grant, we don't have to do this today. We could wait. Get married quietly. Tell them after." "No." His voice was firm. "I spent 2 years hiding from judgment, from grief, from life. I'm done hiding." He looked at her directly. "If we're doing this, we do it right. In front of everyone. Let them see us choose each other." Ruth held Hope closer. The baby was awake, playing with her mother's hair, oblivious to what was coming. "What if they turn violent?" Ruth asked quietly. "Then we leave, together." Grant checked his rifle, his movements deliberate despite the bandages still on his hands. "But we leave with our heads up, not running. Choosing." Ruth nodded. She dressed in her best dress, the one that was mended but clean, braided her hair, held Hope in a sling against her chest. Grant wore his good coat, the one Anna had made him for church. He looked at himself in the small mirror by the door and saw a man he barely recognized. A man about to fight for something instead of surrendering to everything. They rode together on Grant's horse, Ruth in front, Hope between them. The morning was clear and cold. Their breath fogged in the air. Neither spoke. There was nothing left to say. The words would come soon enough. Town appeared on the horizon, like judgment itself. Silver Ridge was small, maybe 300 people. One main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, a bank. Everyone knew everyone, and everyone knew everyone's business. Grant felt Ruth stiffen as they rode into town. "Steady," he murmured. "I'm right here." It was market day. The street was full of wagons, horses, people buying supplies before the next storm hit. Grant rode straight to the center of town, dismounted in front of the general store where the most people gathered. Conversations stopped, heads turned. Grant helped Ruth down, kept her hand in his. "Stay close," he said quietly. Warren Kent was the first to approach. He'd been loading supplies into a wagon. His face split into a satisfied smirk when he saw them. "McCoy, didn't expect to see you here." His eyes flicked to Ruth. "Or her. Thought we settled this yesterday." "You settled nothing." Grant's voice carried across the square. People were gathering now, forming a loose circle. "I came to set the record straight." "There's nothing to set straight." Warren crossed his arms. "You made the right choice. Sent the woman away. We all saw it." "You saw me fail." Grant stepped forward. "Saw me let fear make me a coward. But I'm done failing." He turned to address the growing crowd. Ruth stood beside him, her chin up, despite the fear in her eyes. "This woman," Grant said, his voice clear and strong, "is Ruth Winslow. She's going to be my wife. Any man who speaks against her speaks against me." The murmurs started immediately. Shocked, scandalized. Exactly what Grant expected. Warren's smirk faded. "You can't be serious. This woman has a reputation. She's cursed. Her husband died because of her." "Her husband died in a mine collapse." Grant's voice was hard. "An accident. Nothing more." The whole town of Benton said, "Benton can go to hell." Grant cut him off. "Just like this town can. I don't care what you think you know about her past." Reverend Silas pushed through the crowd, his face tight with disapproval. "Grant, this is madness. Think of Anna. Think of what she'd say." "I am thinking of Anna." Grant pulled the pressed wildflower from his pocket, held it up for everyone to see. This was hers, from the day she told me she was pregnant. The day I was too busy to really listen. Too busy building an empire to notice I was losing what mattered. His voice cracked, but he pushed through. Anna died because I wasn't there. Because I chose work over her. Because I was a coward who couldn't see what was right in front of me. He looked at the crowd, at their judgmental faces, at the people who'd whispered about him for 2 years. "You want scripture. Reverend, you want God's word." Grant opened Anna's Bible, found the passage, read it aloud, his voice steady now. Ruth said to Naomi, "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." He looked at Ruth, at her proud, frightened face. "This Ruth said that to me. Stayed through winter when she could have run, cleaned my house, fed me, taught me how to read so I could honor my dead wife's memory, brought life back into a tomb." Grant's voice rose. "And when you came to judge her to drive her away, I let you. I stood silent while she walked into the cold to die. Just like I stood silent while Anna needed me, and I chose business over her." He turned back to the crowd. "But I'm done being silent, done being small, done letting fear make my choices." Sheriff Briggs stepped forward. He was an older man, weathered, his expression unreadable. "Grant, you know how this looks. A widow with a child living in your house, unmarried. It reflects on all of us." "Then I'll marry her." Grant's voice was iron. "Today. Right now. Reverend Silas, you want to save my soul. Marry us." Silas sputtered. "I can't, the banns haven't been read. There are procedures." "To hell with procedures." Grant gestured around. "You want propriety? You want respectability? Fine. Bear witness. All of you. I, Grant McCoy, take Ruth Winslow as my wife. Before God and this town. She's mine and I'm hers, and anyone who tries to separate us will answer to me." The square was dead silent. Then a voice spoke from the back, an old woman's voice, sharp and clear. "The boy speaks truth." Martha Doyle pushed through the crowd. She was 70 if she was a day a widow herself, respected by everyone in town. She walked with a cane, but her back was straight. She stopped beside Ruth, looked her up and down. Then she turned to face the crowd. "Which of us hasn't needed grace?" Martha's voice carried like a bell. "Who among us can say we've never faltered, never needed a second chance?" She looked around, meeting eyes. "I've lived in this town for 50 years, buried 2 husbands, raised 4 children alone when everyone said a woman couldn't. And I've watched this town drive away more good people than we've welcomed because we're so busy protecting our precious respectability." Martha gestured to Ruth. "This woman survived what would have killed most of us. Lost her husband, lost her home, walked through winter with a baby because no one would help her. And when Grant McCoy offered shelter, she took it, worked for it, earned it." She turned to Grant. "And you, boy, you've been dead for 2 years, walking and breathing but dead inside. I see it in your eyes every Sunday at church when you bother to come. This woman brought you back to life." Martha planted her cane. "So you want to judge her, judge them both. Then you judge me too, because I stand with them." The crowd shifted. Uncomfortable now. A young mother stepped forward. Mary Collins holding her infant son. "Mrs. Doyle's right. We talk about Christian charity, but where's our charity when it matters?" She looked at Ruth. "I'm sorry, ma'am, for what we almost did to you." Another person moved. Old Jacob Kane, the rancher who'd known Grant since he was a boy. "Your Anna would be proud, son. She'd be real proud." One by one, people shifted. Not everyone. Warren Kent stood rigid, furious. Reverend Silas looked like he'd been slapped. But enough people moved. Enough voices murmured agreement. The tide was turning. Sheriff Briggs removed his hat. "Grant, if you're serious about this, I won't stand in your way. Woman deserves a chance. We all do." Warren finally exploded. "This is insane. You're all insane. That woman is cursed. She'll destroy him just like she destroyed her first husband." "Shut your mouth, Kent." Grant's voice was deadly quiet. "Or I'll shut it for you." "You threatening me, McCoy?" "I'm promising you." Grant took a step toward Warren. "You come near my wife, near my family, I'll make you regret it. I've got land, money, influence, and I'm not afraid to use every bit of it to bury you." Warren's face went red. "You'll regret this. Mark my words. That woman will ruin you." "Maybe." Grant shrugged. "But it'll be my choice, my life, my ruin if it comes." He looked around at the crowd. "Anyone else want to threaten my wife? Want to call her cursed? Want to drive her away?" Silence. "Then we're done here." Grant turned to Reverend Silas. "You going to marry us or not?" Silas looked torn. Looked at the crowd. At Martha Doyle's fierce eyes. At the people nodding. "I'll need witnesses," he said finally. "And you'll need to come to the church. I won't do this in the street like animals." "Fine." Grant helped Ruth back onto the horse. "Lead the way, Reverend." They processed to the church like a strange wedding parade. Grant and Ruth on horseback. Martha Doyle walking beside them with her cane. Mary Collins and her baby. Jacob Kane, the sheriff. Others who'd been moved by Grant's words or Martha's challenge or their own buried guilt. Warren Kent didn't follow. Neither did some others. But enough came. Enough witnessed. The church was small. Cold. Reverend Silas lit candles with shaking hands. Grant stood at the altar with Ruth beside him. Hope was wide-eyed, sensing something important was happening. Silas opened his Bible. His voice was stiff, formal, but he spoke the words. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here." Yes, Grant barely heard him. He was looking at Ruth, at her proud, beautiful face, at the woman who'd walked out of nowhere and given him a reason to live. "Do you, Grant William McCoy, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." Grant's voice was clear. "Do you, Ruth Elizabeth Winslow, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Ruth's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Silas closed the Bible. "God have mercy on you both." Grant leaned down, kissed Ruth gently. Hope squealed between them, making everyone laugh despite the tension. Martha Doyle stepped forward, pressed a worn handkerchief into Ruth's hand. "Welcome to Silver Ridge, Mrs. McCoy. Properly this time." Ruth took it, tears streaming now. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Martha's smile was wry. "Town's got a long memory. This won't be easy." "Nothing worth having ever is," Grant said. He shook hands with Jacob Kane, with the sheriff, with the others who'd stayed. As they left the church, Warren Kent was waiting across the street. His face was twisted with rage. "You'll regret this, McCoy," he shouted. "She'll destroy you. Just wait and see." Grant didn't respond. Just helped Ruth onto the horse, climbed up behind her, and rode away. They didn't speak until they were clear of town. Then Ruth let out a shaky breath. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen," she said quietly. "Or the stupidest." Grant's arms tightened around her. "But I meant every word. You're my wife now, Ruth, for better or worse." "Mostly worse, probably." "I'll take it." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "We'll face it together." They rode home through the cold afternoon. Hope fell asleep between them, lulled by the horse's rhythm. The cabin appeared through the trees, smoke rising from the chimney Jonas must have tended. Home. Grant helped Ruth down. They stood in front of the cabin looking at it with new eyes. "It's really ours now," Ruth whispered. "Both of ours." "It's been ours for a while." Grant took her hand. "I was just too scared to admit it." They walked inside together. The cabin was warm, clean, full of the life they'd built together over the long winter. Grant closed the door behind them, locked it. Then he turned to Ruth. "I know this isn't how you imagined getting married," he said. "No flowers, no celebration. Just a scared man and a desperate woman making promises in front of hostile witnesses." "It's perfect." Ruth set Hope in her cradle. The baby immediately grabbed the carved flowers on the headboard, examining them with intense concentration. Ruth turned back to Grant. "It's real. That's all I ever wanted. Something real." Grant crossed to her, took her hands in his bandaged ones. "I can't promise it'll be easy. Warren's right about one thing. The town won't forget quickly. We'll face judgment, gossip, maybe worse. I know. And I can't promise I'll always be brave. Today I was. Tomorrow I might fail again. Then I'll stand when you can't." Ruth's voice was fierce. "We take turns. That's what marriage is, isn't it? Taking turns being strong." Grant pulled her close, held her. This woman who'd been lost and was now found. Who'd given him a reason to wake up every morning. Who'd taught him that love after loss was possible. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not giving up on me yesterday, for not running when I failed you. I did run. You came after me. And I'll keep coming after you, every time, for the rest of our lives." He pulled back to look at her. "That's my vow, Ruth McCoy. I'll never stop coming after you." Ruth smiled through tears. "Then I vow to be worth catching." They stood like that, holding each other, while Hope played in her cradle, and the fire crackled, and the world outside slowly forgot to judge them. That night they moved Grant's things into Ruth's room. Anna's room. Their room now. Grant hesitated at the threshold, Anna's shirts in his arms. "She'd want this," Ruth said softly. "She'd want you to live." "I know." Grant stepped inside, set his clothes on the trunk. "But it still feels like betrayal." "It's not betrayal. It's survival." Ruth touched his face. "We're both surviving, Grant. That's all we can do. Survive and try to find moments of joy in between." Grant nodded. They prepared for bed awkwardly, both hyper-aware of each other. This was their wedding night. But neither expected anything. They were too exhausted, too raw. They lay in bed, a careful distance between them. Hope slept peacefully in her cradle nearby. "Grant," Ruth's voice was small in the darkness. "Yeah. I'm glad you found me at that crossroads." "So am I. Even though I've brought you nothing but trouble." Grant rolled to face her. In the dim light from the dying fire, he could see her outline. "You brought me life, Ruth. That's not trouble. That's grace." Ruth reached for his hand, found it, held it. They fell asleep like that, connected, married, together. And for the first night in 2 years, Grant didn't dream of Anna dying. He dreamed of Ruth living, of hope growing, of a future that might actually be worth waking up for. Outside, winter continued its hold. The cold didn't care about their choices. The snow didn't stop because they'd found each other. But inside, wrapped in blankets and hope and fragile new promises, they were warm. And that was enough. Spring came the way all good things come. Slowly then, all at once, earning every bit of green. March brought the first thaw. Water dripped from the cabin roof. Ice cracked on the well. The cattle moved restlessly in the pastures, sensing change. Ruth woke each morning to find Grant already up, standing at the window watching the land transform. She'd come to recognize the set of his shoulders when he was thinking about Anna, when he was remembering. "She loved spring," Grant said one morning without turning. Said it proved God kept his promises. Ruth came to stand beside him. "Do you believe that?" "I'm starting to." He looked at her. "You and Hope are here. That feels like a kept promise." They'd fallen into new rhythms. Husband and wife, but still learning what that meant. Grant was patient, careful. He never pushed. Some nights they lay side by side talking until dawn. Some nights they didn't talk at all, just existed together in comfortable silence. They were building something. Slow, deliberate, Real. Martha Doyle visited weekly now, bringing other women from town. Not everyone, but enough. They taught Ruth their recipes, their quilting patterns, their gossip, accepted her into the fabric of their lives one stitch at a time. "You're doing well," Martha said one afternoon watching Ruth knead bread. "Town's starting to forget to be scandalized. Starting to, give it time, child. We're a stubborn people. But we're also practical. Grant stood by you. You've proven yourself. That counts for something." Ruth looked out the window to where Grant was working with Jonas and Peter repairing winter damage to the barn. His hands had healed completely. He moved with purpose now. With life. "He saved me," Ruth said quietly. "No." Martha's voice was firm. "You saved each other. That's what the good marriages do. Take turns drowning. Take turns pulling each other up." Hope crawled across the floor, determined and fearless. She was nearly a year old now, pulling herself up on furniture, trying desperately to walk. "She'll be running by summer," Martha predicted. "Then you'll never rest again." Ruth smiled. "Good, I've had enough rest to last a lifetime." April brought rain. Cold, relentless, turning the roads to mud. Grant couldn't get to the lumber mill for 2 weeks. They were trapped at the cabin together, forced into even closer quarters. Ruth discovered Grant was terrible at being idle. "Sit down," she said for the 100th time. "You're making me nervous." "I should be working." "You are working. You're being a husband, a father." She gestured to Hope, who was demanding Grant's attention with loud babbling. "That's work too." Grant picked up, Hope lifted her high. She shrieked with laughter. He brought her down, pressed his forehead to hers. "You're right," he said. "This is work, good work." Those rain-soaked weeks taught them how to be a family, how to navigate each other's moods, how to fight without destroying, how to apologize without pride getting in the way. They fought about small things, about Grant working too hard, about Ruth not asking for help when she needed it, about whose turn it was to get up with Hope in the night. Normal things, marriage things. "I'm not her," Ruth said one night after a particularly tense dinner. "I'm not Anna. I can't be what she was." Grant stopped washing dishes, turned to face her. "I know you're not Anna. I don't want you to be." "Then why do you look at me sometimes like you're comparing?" "I'm not comparing. I'm remembering." Grant dried his hands. "Ruth Anna was my first love, my childhood sweetheart. I can't erase her. Can't pretend she didn't exist. I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" Ruth struggled for words. "I'm asking if there's room for me. Really me. Not just the woman who filled the empty space Anna left." Grant crossed to her, took her hands. "There's room. There's always been room. You're not filling Anna's space, Ruth. You're creating your own." He pulled her close. "I loved Anna. I'll always love her. But I love you too. Differently. But just as real." Ruth leaned into him. Let herself believe it. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of what?" "That you'll wake up one day and realize you married me out of guilt. Out of loneliness. That I'm just convenient." "Ruth McCoy." Grant's voice was fierce. "Look at me." She did. "I married you because you make me want to wake up. Because you laugh at my terrible jokes. Because you're strong enough to call me on my nonsense. Because when Hope smiles, you smile, and watching you smile makes me remember what joy feels like." He cupped her face. "That's not convenience. That's love." Ruth's throat tightened. "Say it again." "I love you." Again. "I love you, Ruth." Grant kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I love you." They made love that night for the first time. Gentle, hesitant. Learning each other's bodies the way they'd learned each other's hearts. Slowly. With care. With grace. Afterward, Ruth lay in Grant's arms listening to his heartbeat. "That was," she started, "different from Thomas. Everything's different from Thomas." Ruth propped herself up to look at Grant. Thomas and I were children playing at marriage. You and I are adults who've already buried our first chances. We know what we're risking. Grant tucked hair behind her ear. And we're choosing it anyway. Idiots, both of us. The best kind of idiots. Grant pulled her back down. The kind who hope anyway. May brought wildflowers. Ruth planted them along the front path, the same kind Anna had loved. She worked the soil with careful hands, Grant beside her digging holes. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For honoring her, for not trying to erase her." Ruth sat back on her heels. "Grant, Anna led you to me. Whether you believe that or not, I believe it. She loved you enough to want you to live after she was gone. I'm just trying to help you do that." They planted in comfortable silence. Hope crawled in the grass nearby, chasing a butterfly with single-minded determination. "She's going to walk soon," Grant said, watching Hope. "I know." "Then we'll really be in trouble." Ruth laughed. It was easier to laugh now, easier to breathe. The weight of shame and judgment had lifted, replaced by something lighter. Not happiness, not yet, but the possibility of happiness. That was enough. Warren Kent tried one more time in early June. He rode out to the ranch alone, his face hard with determination. Grant met him at the property line, rifle across his saddle. "Turn around, Kent." "I'm here to make you an offer, McCoy, a good one." Warren pulled out papers. "I'll buy your timber rights, top dollar, more than they're worth. Enough for you to start fresh somewhere else. Somewhere your wife's reputation won't follow." Grant didn't take the papers. "Not interested." "You should be. The town's still talking, still judging. Your business is suffering. I've heard the contracts aren't coming in like they used to." "My business is fine. For now. But how long can you hold out? How long before the judgment becomes too much?" Warren leaned forward. "I'm offering you an escape, Grant. Take it." "I don't need an escape. I have everything I need right here." Warren's face darkened. "You're a fool. That woman will ruin you." "Maybe." Grant's voice was calm. "But she'll be my ruin. My choice. My life. And frankly, Kent, it's none of your damn business." He raised the rifle slightly. Not threatening, just reminding. "Now get off my land. And don't come back." Warren stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned his horse and rode away. Grant watched him go, then rode back to the cabin where Ruth was hanging laundry. "Warren," she asked. "Gone. For good this time, I think." Ruth hung another sheet. "And if he's right, if I do ruin you, then we'll be ruined together." Grant dismounted, came to stand beside her. "Ruth, I spent 2 years being destroyed by grief, by guilt, by silence. You didn't ruin me. You rebuilt me." He took her hand. "Whatever comes, we face it together. That's the deal. That's marriage." Ruth squeezed his hand. Together. Together. The summer stretched long and golden. Grant's business didn't fail. If anything, it grew. The men who worked for him respected his stand. The families who'd witnessed their marriage in the church started coming around. Not all of them, but enough. Silver Ridge learned to absorb Ruth McCoy. Learned that she was a good woman who'd survived bad circumstances. Learned that Grant was happier, lighter, more present than he'd been in years. Slowly the judgment faded. Not completely. There were still whispers. Still people who crossed the street rather than greet Ruth. But they became background noise instead of the main story. Hope took her first steps in July. She stood up in the middle of the cabin, looked at Grant and Ruth with determined eyes, and launched herself forward. Grant caught her, lifted her high. "That's my girl, fearless like your mama." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. Happy tears. The kind she'd forgotten existed. They celebrated Hope's first birthday in August, with Martha, Mary Collins, Jacob Kane, and a handful of others. It was a small party. Simple, but full of laughter and life. "Look at you," Martha said to Ruth, watching her cut cake. A proper wife, a proper mother, a proper member of this community. I don't know about proper, Ruth said. Proper enough. Martha smiled. You've earned your place, child. No one can take that from you now. That night, after everyone left, Grant and Ruth sat on the porch in the rocking chairs. 2 chairs now. Grant had built the second one in spring. Hope slept inside, exhausted from her party. The evening was warm, the sky painted pink and gold. You know what today is? Grant asked. Hope's birthday. And 9 months since we got married. He reached for Ruth's hand. 9 months since I stood in that town square and finally found my courage. Ruth laced her fingers through his. Best 9 months of my life. Even with the judgment, the gossip, Warren Kent's threats. Especially with all that. Ruth turned to look at him. Because we faced it together. Because you stood when I was weak. Because I stood when you were weak. Because we built something real. Grant brought her hand to his lips. Kissed it. I love you, Ruth McCoy. I love you too. They rocked in silence, watching the sunset paint the mountains. The wildflowers Anna had loved and Ruth had planted bloomed in riotous color. The cabin door stood open, warm light spilling out into the dusk. Inside, Hope's cradle sat empty. She'd outgrown it months ago, moved to a small bed Grant had built. But they'd kept the cradle, a reminder of where they'd started, of what they'd survived. Do you still think about that crossroads? Ruth asked quietly. Where you found me? Every day. Grant's voice was soft. I think about how close I came to riding past. How close I came to letting fear keep me silent. What changed your mind? You did. You looked at me with those eyes, terrified but proud, and said, I'm dying. Not begging, not pleading, just stating truth. He squeezed her hand. And I realized I was dying too. Had been for 2 years. And maybe if I helped you live, I'd remember how to live too. Ruth's throat tightened. Did it work? Grant looked at her, really looked. What do you think? Ruth saw it in his eyes. The life, the joy, the hope that had been absent that snowy day 9 months ago. Yeah, she whispered. It worked. They sat until full dark, until the stars came out, until the night wrapped around them like a blessing. Inside, Hope stirred, made a small sound. Ruth started to rise, but Grant stopped her. I'll get her. He went inside. Ruth heard him talking to Hope in low, gentle tones. Heard Hope's sleepy giggle. Heard Grant singing badly off-key but full of love the lullaby Ruth had taught him. This was home. This moment. This man. This life they'd built from broken pieces. Ruth closed her eyes and whispered to the night, to Anna's memory, to whatever God might be listening. Thank you. The breeze stirred, the wildflowers rustled, and somewhere in the darkness, Ruth felt Anna's presence. Not haunting, not judging, just blessing them. Releasing Grant to this new life, this new love. Grant emerged with Hope, who insisted on staying up despite the late hour. They sat together on the porch, the 3 of them watching fireflies dance in the warm night. Tell me a story, Papa, Hope demanded in her limited vocabulary. Grant looked at Ruth. She nodded. Once upon a time, Grant began, there was a widow who stood at a crossroads where 4 roads meant nothing. Hope listened, her eyes wide. Ruth listened too, hearing their story told back to them. Hearing Grant transform their pain into something beautiful, something worth remembering. And the cowboy said, Then follow me home. Grant continued, And she did. And they found that home wasn't a place. It was a choice. A choice to stay even when leaving was easier. A choice to love even when love had failed before. A choice to hope even when hope seemed foolish. He looked at Ruth over Hope's head. And they lived. Not happily ever after, because life isn't that simple. But truly, fully, together. Hope clapped. Again. Tomorrow, Ruth promised. Tonight, you sleep. They carried Hope to bed together, tucked her in, kissed her forehead, stood watching her sleep, this miracle child who'd survived when she shouldn't have. She's beautiful, Grant whispered. She gets it from you, Ruth teased. She gets it from her mama. Grant pulled Ruth close. Gets her strength, her courage, her stubborn refusal to quit. They went to bed holding each other, their room, their bed, their life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Winter would come again. There would be hardships, losses, grief. That was the nature of life. But they would face it together. Would take turns being strong. Would remind each other that they'd survived worse. That they'd found each other at the lowest point and built something worth keeping. Grant fell asleep first, his breathing deep and even. Ruth lay awake a while longer thinking about roads. About the one that had led her to that crossroads. About the one Grant had been on when he found her. About how those roads had converged at exactly the right moment. Or maybe the wrong moment that became right because they chose to make it so. She thought about Thomas, her first husband. About Anna Grant's first wife. About the love they'd had and lost. About the guilt they'd carried. And she realized something profound. She and Grant hadn't forgotten their first loves, hadn't erased them. They'd honored them by learning from them, by choosing not to repeat the same mistakes, by building something new that incorporated the lessons of the old. That was the real story. Not about replacement, about transformation, about two broken people who'd gathered their shattered pieces and built something stronger than what they'd lost. Ruth pressed her hand to her stomach. She hadn't told Grant yet, hadn't told anyone, but she knew. Another life growing, another chance, another hope. She wasn't scared, not anymore, because she knew if something went wrong, Grant would be there, would hold her through it, would grieve with her, would survive with her. And if everything went right, they'd welcome this new life together, would expand their family, would prove that second chances were real. Ruth closed her eyes and smiled. Outside, the night was vast and dark. Inside, wrapped in Grant's arms, with Hope sleeping peacefully nearby and new life growing within her, Ruth was home. Not the cabin, not the land. Home was this. This man who'd found her lost and chose to be found with her. This child who'd survived against odds. This family they'd built from nothing but determination and grace. The widow and the cowboy. The cursed woman and the grieving man. The lost and the broken. Now just Ruth and Grant McCoy. Husband and wife. Partners. Survivors. Lovers. Parents. Home. And that was everything.